Hi, I'm Rebecca Kanopka, Ag Agent of Carter County, and welcome to Around the Farm.
And I'm Philip Kanopka, Ag Agent in Lewis County. Today we're on location at Craycraft Farms. He does a lot of vegetable production and fruit production. And today we're going to talk about strawberry production in particular. And the basics that apply to him can also apply to you in a homeowner situation.
So I want to make sure that we get our site prepared, and you can see he's working on his site. But you want a nice sandy loam soil with lots of organic matter that has good drainage.
Good drainage is very important because strawberries don't like wet feet, and wet feet is a lot of water that hangs around the roots. We want to make sure that we run that fine line of having water, but not too much water.
And the same is true for air too, right? Not just water?
That is correct. We want to make sure we have good air drainage as well. And I know it sounds crazy, but think of air flowing like water flows. Cold air is always going to run downhill. So we don't want to put our strawberries at the lowest point of our property. We want to make sure that they're either raised a little bit or on a higher point so the cold air can flow away. And especially during the spring when we're trying to get these things to bloom out, we don't want them to freeze and ruin our strawberry crop.
So as your strawberries arrive, they may come in on a time that is not perfect for planting. So you may have to keep them for a few days before you can get them in the ground. So make sure that you keep the roots nice and moist, and you can place them in a refrigerator with a damp paper towel wrapped around the roots. Make sure that you don't have any other fresh fruits or vegetables in your refrigerator, as they give off ethylene, which can inhibit strawberry growth. Before you start preparing your soil, you want to select a good site. We mentioned that you need a sandy loam with good drainage, but you also want to look at the crop history that's been there before. You don't want to follow a previous patch of strawberries. That can lead to some pest problems and disease problems. In addition to not following strawberries, you also don't want to follow eggplant, peppers, potatoes, tomatoes, or tobacco, as these previous crops can lead to an increase in verticillium diseases.
The most important thing after we've got our soil prepared is when we go to put the strawberry plants in the ground is you don't want to put them too deep, you don't want to put them too high, you want to put them just right. So what we want to say is the crown needs to be right above the soil surface. You don't want any roots showing, and you don't want to bury the crown. So we want to make sure we place those just right so we can get the berries to thrive. We want to talk about plant spacing. We want our rows 3 to 4 foot apart, depending on your preference. The more common is 3 foot. And then we want to put our plants in the row, a single row, 2.5 feet apart. The beauty of a matted row system, which is the system we're talking about, is that it produces its own population. The plant will actually put off what they call daughter plants, which is runners that go across the top of the soil, and they will root. So they're going to increase our own population from the plants that we put in.
So after we get our plants in the ground, then it's time to start taking care of them. So obviously you want to make sure they're well watered. They don't like wet feet, but they will need adequate water throughout the growing season. And also something you may not think about, but they will need adequate water in the fall, because in the fall is when they are producing buds for the following year. If the plant is stressed, you won't have as nice of buds for the coming year, and so that will hurt your fruit production for next year.
A quick trick for homeowners is you can go and purchase you a soaker hose. Soaker hose will allow water to go down to the roots without getting a lot of the foliage wet, and that's going to be a trick to keep the disease down if we can keep the foliage dry as possible.
So in addition to disease management and watering, also we'll have to control the weeds. So it's important to hoe out your strawberries and keep the weeds out of them. Once your weeds get established, it's hard to correct that.
From a homeowner standpoint, there's not a whole lot of chemicals that we can recommend to you. So unfortunately, a good garden hoe and some good weed pulling is the best option you can get. You can mulch with clean straw around your plants, and that will help reduce some of the weed pressures.
And since you mentioned straw, let's go ahead and talk about this winter. When it gets to be about 20 degrees or colder, which is typically around December in Kentucky, you want to go ahead and mulch your strawberries. And that will allow them to survive the winter and have good berry production in the following spring. So you want to make sure you're using a good clean straw that doesn't have a lot of weed seed or even the wheat grain as well.
You also may want to check with the farm store you purchased it off of to make sure it wasn't treated with herbicides. Some of these herbicides can carry over and can cause some issues in our berry production.
So you want to make sure you also fertilize your plants. Barnyard manures make a good fertilizer, and if you're using a commercial fertilizer, you want to apply that prior to planting. And as always, you can get a soil test run through the extension office to tell you your exact nutrient requirements.
And that basically takes all the guesswork out of it. We can tell you dial it right in so we're not over applying and we're not under applying. The other trick, once you get your berries set, is to resist the temptation of allowing them to bloom. We want to make sure we pick the blooms off the first year, and we want the plant to put the energy back into daughter plants so we can have more plants per square foot, and that'll allow us a better crop next year. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact me or Rebecca at the extension office or your local extension office. Those folks will be glad to help you out however they can.